Were you the only reporter down there?
I was the only one that I saw, Ezra. I mean, maybe the likes of Global, CTV, CBC were there earlier, but they weren't there when I got there, which was Friday evening, and I waited until there was just, no more light for me to film, which was almost about 4 hours before the border closed. So I was surprised by the lack of media because we know this is a captivating story for millions of Canadians. In the media, we're in the eyeball business. We want stories that are engaging, that people will tune into. And I think this might be a statement that the idea of closing a border to illegal migrants, that's not a leftist viewpoint that so many in the media like, that obviously our government, they're open borders people, Ezra, they don't like. So I think because there's so many handouts right now to broadcast newspaper and magazine journalists that you don't really have to go after these hot stories because they have a safety net, like the trapeze artist. He can be a little more daring because if he screws up, he's going to fall into a safety net. So they weren't there. And secondly, as I said in the report, I was very surprised. I guess Trudeau's announcement caught everybody by surprise that there wasn't this last-minute stampede, kind of like people going to the store on Christmas Eve to buy it's their last chance to get a Christmas gift. I didn't see a single migrant.
I think besides the fact that journalists are incurious now because they're on the dole, I think for 4 years, most mainstream media journalists have said closing the border is racist. And so when it's done by their precious Justin Trudeau, they can't handle the incongruity there. They don't want to report that it happened because that would acknowledge, first of all, that it was doable, second of all, that it wasn't racist, third of all, that it was smart, it should have been done before, and they don't want to show that contradiction. So there's a lot of reasons why the other media haven't reported that. Now, one of the things you and I talked about was, because the cops stopped you from getting close to it on the Canadian side, what's it like on the American side? But we decided that just wasn't worth putting you in a 14-day self-isolation.
Indeed. I was ready to go to New York State, and with a bit of a risk, because this is changing so fast, Ezra. On Friday evening, I reported that there were more than 4,700 coronavirus positive tests in New York State, at least 34 deaths. Can you believe it, Ezra, that when I woke up on Saturday morning, the number had gone from 4,700 to more than 10,000 in the space of 12 hours, and at least 35 deaths. And so this is the hotspot right now in America, which makes it more urgent, I would suggest, that you close this bloody border down, because this is the originating point for these migrants coming in, the hot spot for the virus. I mean, you couldn't write this if you were penning a disaster script. So, yeah, I would have gone over there. We consulted by email. And if I was allowed over there, and that was a big if, secondly, coming back, I would definitely have to go into quarantine, which would mean you would lose my shoe leather journalism services for 14 days at least.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you did what you did, and we'll have to find someone in America who can come up from the American side and won't have to cross the border back either way to be put into quarantine. Who knows, with New York being in pretty much a lockdown too. These are interesting days. I think this virus is obviously a crisis. It's growing exponentially, but I think what's also growing exponentially and a lot faster is unemployment, recession, poverty. And I know a lot of Canadians are just simply one paycheck away from being out of cash. And we saw 500,000 Canadians thrown out of work last week. I don't know how long this treat everyone the same approach, like ban everyone from the streets, ban everyone. I just don't know how long that's going to maintain. And then there's the mental health of people cooped up, especially in the cities, where, you know, if you can't leave your small apartment and if all you can do is watch YouTube or Netflix, I think people will go a little bit stir crazy, and the odd person will actually go crazy.
And you know what? I think there's evidence to back this up. On Friday, I heard an interview on a radio station, Ezra, and it was about how women's shelters right now across Canada are jam-packed because the abuse has spiked. And I think it's because of being confined to quarters. Maybe the fellow is, laid off or fired from his work. And it's just, I think this is a tragic and unfortunate and horrible thing, but it just goes to show you the psychology of this. And we're in the early days, Ezra, that the big question, the huge question is this, and I put it to you, anyone on the team, the experts out there, what month of the year or next year do things return to normal?
Yeah.
We don't know, you know. And you mentioned recession. Ezra, I would embrace recession right now. I think it's going to be depression. All over the world, economies are being destroyed, and it's in the billions going into the trillions, and I don't see any quick way out of this, I'm sorry to say.
I got to tell you, I can't think of anyone worse to be in charge as the commander, the decider, the executive for Canada than Justin Trudeau. I suppose I can always think of someone worse, Jagmeet Singh or Elizabeth May, but it's about as bad as it gets. I think that, I don't know what's ahead, but we'll do our best to keep reporting on it. That's an excerpt from my daily show, the Ezra Levant Show. Every day I do a monologue on the news of the day, then I interview an interesting guest, and then I read my hate mail. You gotta subscribe. Go to rebelnews.com.